Hello everyone! Thanks for stopping by to hear what else I saw in April that I haven't already told you about. Movie number 1 is 1933's Deluge, in which a succession of intense earthquakes and tsunamis bring an end to civilization as we know it. Even though I have never seen an apocalyptic movie this old before, the subject matter is very familiar because apparently, no matter the age of the movie or the TV show, things are bound to go the same way. There's a disastrous catalyst, society collapses, the few survivors band together, and eventually there's a desperate fight over women and resources. The movie's greatest feature is the sequence in which New York City is completely demolished. The special effects are impressive, especially for the time. After that, the focus turns to the inevitable human drama, with a pretty girl becoming the target of a Judd Fry-looking ruffian and a rapey, murderous gang. And since this was a pre-code production, it's got some racy bits. I was disappointed that this turned out to make up the bulk of the plot after that epic beginning, but it still had some distinctive qualities, and it was a fine film. I would have assumed it had a strong influence on later apocalyptic films, but it's my understanding it was considered lost for a long time, so perhaps not. As the first of its kind, though, it certainly would have made an impact on those who saw it in 1933. Movie number 2 is the 1962 French New Wave film Cleo from 5 to 7, or Cleo de 5 à 7. Directed by Agnès Varda, this film follows a beautiful, stylish young singer, played by Corinne Marchand, as she passes the time waiting to learn if she has a terminal illness. I wanted to see this not because cinephiles make such a big deal out of it, but because I wanted to know, what's the outcome? Is she sick or not? What I learned is that by the time you find out what the results are, it's not as important as it seemed. There's a big difference in Cleo at 5 and Cleo at 7. She's a woman whose confidence and vulnerability are constantly at war with each other. Fear of death only exacerbates the feelings of dissatisfaction and inadequacy she already has, whether she knows it or not. She has gorgeous clothes, an affectionate lover, a maid who dotes on her, she turns heads, she's released 3 singles, she's got a spacious apartment, but she's unhappy, and now she's wondering, what does she really have? And what do people really think of her? As the camera follows her around, I wouldn't say she's transformed, but she finds comfort and peace in unexpected places. This is an artistic slice-of-life film and a portrait of self-reflection and self-examination. Through the first half, I did keep thinking, this looks beautiful, the direction and cinematography are excellent, but I'm not really feeling the movie itself. A few things jumped out at me. One, the stark contrast between the glamorous, Cleo herself, and the unglamorous, meaning the regular French people on the street. And by the way, what was with the guy putting frogs in his mouth? That was revolting. 2, there's a thick layer of superstition, which is a cultural thing, and I wasn't into that. 3, there are whispers of mortality throughout, so that even when Cleo manages to be distracted from her anxiety, something jerks her right back. That is so relatable. So there was a decent stretch where I didn't have a ton of enthusiasm for the movie, aside from acknowledging it looks great, there are a lot of stunning shots, Cleo's first and third outfits are adorably chic, and her real hair is much cuter than the wig. But by the end, I appreciated it. I love the idea of it. Following a character in real time or just about as she waits for bad news, and showing how the anticipation and the potential significance affects her psychologically and how others respond to that. I also think its ending has an unexpected sweetness to it. Movie number 3 is a Powell and Pressburger film, 1943's The Life and Death of Colonel Blimp, in which the military career and personal life of a now out-of-touch general, Roger Livesey, is recounted across his 40-plus years of service. The narrative focuses on his friendship with a German officer, Anton Walbrook, and his devotion to a woman he loved and lost, with all 3 female principals played by Deborah Kerr. This film looks great, but that's a given with productions by the Archers, especially the Technicolor ones, although I must say, of my 3 favorite Powell and Pressburger movies to date, 2 are in black and white. Costumes are delectable, colors and textures pop, and hair and makeup carry characters through the decades in a way that's obvious but natural. Roger Livesey undergoes the most comprehensive transformation, his Clive Candy changing from an energetic, eager young man to a paunchy old man with a walrus mustache. When we first jumped back in time, I felt that maybe they'd gone overboard with makeup and prosthetics. But later, after things had shifted more gradually, I decided they'd actually done a good job making his aging seem authentic. Same with Anton Walbrook. With both actors, I was impressed that their eyes managed to appear older. Plus, they both give excellent vocal performances. Livesey slightly alters his cadence and pitch, while Walbrook focuses on his accent, as his character learns more English and becomes more confident in a foreign language. Though Livesey is the star with considerably more screen time, Walbrook, who was Austrian by the way, is a scene stealer. To have such a favorable portrayal of a German ex-officer, emphasizing the camaraderie between him and a high-ranking English officer during wartime, was controversial to say the least, but what was a sticking point at the time of the film's release is now considered one of its assets. It is a long film. I don't mind that when it's warranted, and I would say that it is warranted here, but it does take about an hour to get to the good stuff. Many Powell and Pressburger films are like that, though, a prologue and/or an extensive setup before the ball really gets going. I don't mention this as a criticism of the movie. The first section isn't slow or boring, and there's nothing I would cut per se. I'm just saying I spent part of that time wondering, where are we going, and when are we going to get there? Movie number 4 is 1952's Diplomatic Courier. Tyrone Power plays a diplomatic courier who's thrust out of his comfort zone when he's told to make contact with a State Department operative in Europe. When things go wrong, he has to figure out who he can trust without getting himself killed. I seldom find Tyrone Power disappointing to watch, and this was not one of those times. Patricia Neal co-stars as an aggressively come-hither widow, oozing style and sex appeal, so it's all Power can do to keep his mind on the job. The movie also features Stephen McNally, Carl Malden, and Hildegard Neff, with brief pre-fame appearances from Charles Bronson and Lee Marvin, and there's also a celebrity impressionist in there who I thought it strange we were focusing on for a segment, and then later on I realized, oh, this actually is relevant. That was cool. There's some nice action here, a little humor, an engaging mystery. There's also a strong third man vibe. It's a thriller set in post-war Europe. Military police are everywhere. You've got a confused American protagonist. You can even hear a zither in one scene. No wonder I liked it. Movie number 5 is 1966's Dimension 5. Equipped with a newfangled time travel belt, Jeffrey Hunter's secret agent attempts to snuff out a Chinese terrorist scheme to bomb Los Angeles. France Nguyen co-stars as a foreign associate who may be playing both sides. I love Jeffrey Hunter, but this was not one of his better films. He himself was okay in it, but I just don't think it was the right fit for him. The script is subpar, it's got some hokey moments and cheesy one-liners, and he had a hard time selling them. His character seems to have a past, present, or future with every lady he encounters, and flirtatious glances abound. The ogling is mutual, and I find that perfectly understandable. If I had been a lady who saw Jeffrey Hunter in the 1950s or the 1960s, I would have ogled him too. But generally speaking, there wasn't much I liked here. The movie had some potential, but it couldn't meet that potential to save its life. There were several scenes that should have been tense, or should have been exciting, but they weren't. Something, direction, editing, I don't know, just didn't line up. I also thought the futuristic gadgets were surprisingly underused. The movie could have been worse, but boy, could it have been better. Movie number 6 is 1950's The Woman in Question, which was released in the US as 5 Angles on Murder. In this British whodunit, a woman who works as a fortune teller is found murdered, but each person the police question gives them a wildly different account of the victim, leaving them in the dark about her true character. The Criterion Channel aptly describes this as a blend of Citizen Kane and Rashomon. An investigator is trying to piece together the truth about a deceased person, and scenes replay from different perspectives with significant variations. If you're curious, Rashomon was released in Japan in August 1950. This came out in the UK in October 1950. Too close for Rashomon to have been an influence in any way. Rashomon didn't reach UK theaters until March 1952. This was directed by Anthony Asquith and stars Jean Kent as the woman in question. And she really delivers 5 different performances, altering her voice and mannerisms along with hair, makeup, clothing. And it was great fun to pick up on all the little changes and discrepancies. In fact, we see all the witnesses and suspects playing variations on their characters, which makes for a good puzzle. The cast includes Dirk Bogarde doing an American accent, which is so strange to hear. He's not bad at it, but the more authentic he sounded, the less right it felt. At first, I thought I'd seen this before, and I almost switched it off in favor of something else, but then I realized it was not 1952's Hunted, and I'm glad I stuck with it because it was very good. Movie number 7 is a Russian film, 1972's Solaris. The inhabitants of a space station orbiting the oceanic planet Solaris have been sending confusing messages back to Earth. When a psychologist is sent to examine the 3 researchers, he's startled by the sudden, inexplicable appearance of a woman who's identical to his dead wife. In an effort to improve my foreign film literacy, I took the plunge and watched my first film directed by Andrei Tarkovsky. Quite frankly, I didn't know anything about Tarkovsky until half a dozen years ago when I started hearing a few YouTube cinephiles name-drop him in their video essays. And I was like, who? Oddly enough, I've heard that this one, while it is probably the most well-known of his films, is the least characteristic of his work. Oh well, it was the one that sounded the most appealing to me. Solaris is based on a sci-fi novel of the same name by Stanislaw Lem, which I just read a month or 2 ago. I'll be doing a reading video soon, maybe next week, and I'll be talking about that book, but I'll tell you in advance that I had mixed feelings about it, and I have mixed feelings about the movie. I was actually impressed with how faithful an adaptation it is. Aside from some details added in the first and last part, it was quite accurate and even, in some ways, easier to follow. My issue stems from the story itself, I guess, and has more to do with personal taste than anything objective. Things take an existential turn, doing a deep philosophical dive, while the narrative more or less stalls in a depressingly vague, or vaguely depressing, gray area. Well, that's all fine and good if that's something you're into. If you're not, well, it's not. And I'm not. At least I was prepared for this troubled navel-gazing, unlike my mom, who lost interest and fell asleep. And I was also prepared for Tarkovsky's trademarks, the sedate pace, slow-moving camera, long takes, and a random instance of levitation. The movie is nearly 3 hours long, and I dare say it could have been 15 minutes shorter, a comment that will make purists clutch their pearls, I'm sure. But I did really like the middle section. The set design, the details, the way the plot unfolds are all very interesting and just strange enough to set you on edge. The entire film has really good atmosphere, and there's a recurring sound that makes you anxious, though you may not be able to articulate why. My mom pointed out that it reminded her of the sound in Picnic at Hanging Rock, and I thought that was an excellent observation. The performers were good too, especially the main actress, who conveys the increasing sense of despair, the depression, and the confused sense of self in a poignant manner without becoming hysterical. It's a compelling, thought-provoking concept, and I think Tarkovsky did a fine job translating the page to the screen. It's just that the final third of the story loses me, no matter the medium. Movie number 8 is 1953's Stolen Identity, a thriller made and set in post-war Vienna, where a displaced American finds himself mixed up with a dead body and a woman trying to leave her controlling husband. This film was produced by actor Turhan Bey, but contrary to Pizza Flix's misleading title, he does not appear in the film. After the first few minutes, I lowered my expectations. It's got a slow start, picture quality is mediocre, and it's jumpy due to some missing frames. But this actually turned out to be a decent movie. It's well shot in general, characters are interesting and likable, with the exception of Francis Lederer's villain. I can tell where it was influenced by earlier films, but characters don't always do what you expect them to do, and as the story picked up steam, I found it pretty engrossing. It's too bad about the quality, but that doesn't make it unwatchable. Movie number 9 is 1968's Madigan. Two police detectives work overtime to catch a killer who slipped through their fingers, while the commissioner contends with a scandalous betrayal. This movie spawned a short-lived TV show in 1972, both starring Richard Widmark as tough guy cop detective Dan Madigan. It surprised me to learn that the TV show came afterward. I knew that there was a TV show accompanying this movie, but I thought it was the other way around. And this felt like an extended episode of a TV show. The plotting, the sequences of scenes, the music, the pre-established characters and relationships. So when I learned that I had it backwards, I was surprised. And there was something weird about this I couldn't put my finger on. It's like the movie was confused about where it exists in time. It's got that grody, seedy, morally gray, late 60s, early 70s vibe. There's infidelity around every corner, there's gratuitous nudity, and yet somehow, simultaneously, the movie looks older than it is, about mid-1950s, especially when they've applied soft focus for some bizarre reason. It just made me feel a little disoriented. Offsetting Widmark, Henry Fonda co-stars as the starchy, by-the-book commissioner dealing with his own plot lines. Widmark and Fonda are basically heading up two separate movies until their paths cross in a shockingly goofy moment. I didn't particularly like this movie. There were things in it that I liked. The gallery of eccentric characters was entertaining, there were some clever lines and quips. I thought James Whitmore was very good as Fonda's chief inspector, and I liked Madigan's partner, played by Harry Gardino. But it had a sordidness I found unappealing. Movie number 10 is 1950's The Wooden Horse, a British war film in which some officers attempt to escape from a German POW camp using a plan inspired by the Trojan horse. I've been wanting to see this for years, but it's another old British movie that may be everywhere over there, but is hard to get in the US. However, it is on the Internet Archive, and I believe it's on Dailymotion as well in 2 parts. And now that I know how to mirror my phone onto the Roku and play videos that way, my parents and I were able to watch it together. The audio was disappointing. I think I missed about 30% of the dialogue, which is a lot, but it was worth it to finally get to see the film, and that at least didn't disappoint. While there are no huge stars here, the cast is full of familiar faces if you watch a lot of movies from this period. Leo Genn stars, and we always like him, alongside Anthony Steele, David Tomlinson, Michael Goodliff, Brian Forbes, Anthony Dawson. Any fan of The Great Escape will recognize many elements here, but I never watch these old POW movies and think, ugh, this is so repetitive. If they appear to be copying each other, it's because these are the things POWs actually did. What makes each take on the scenario interesting is the strategy, the roadblocks, the problem-solving, the variations in the cast of characters. I did find the first part of this more engaging than the second, but it was good from start to finish. and I bet it's even better when you can understand all the dialogue. Movie number 11 is 1988's Crossing Delancey. In this urban rom-com directed by Joan Micklin Silver, Amy Irving plays Izzy, a single woman in New York City whose grandmother is determined to find her a husband. Lovingly steeped in Jewish American culture, this film explores a number of things as the heroine, caught in the clash between modern and traditional ideas, struggles to understand and decide what she truly wants. There are a few risque bits here and there, but I got several chuckles from the moments of absurdity and awkwardness, quite a few of which were somehow relatable. There are droll exchanges aplenty, and I especially enjoyed the antics of the grandmother and the matchmaker to pair Izzy with the pickle man, played by Peter Riegert. There were some things I didn't care for, and some things that I found beyond frustrating. Izzy's got this infatuation with this famous European writer who frequents the Shishi bookshop where she works. Within seconds, it was clear he was arrogant, self-absorbed, and probably insufferable, but she's too dazzled by him to notice. Now, to my embarrassment, I do understand what that's like, but witnessing her make her mistakes drove me crazy. Meanwhile, there's this other guy who's kind and stable and faithful and clearly the better choice, clearly husband material, and she's not interested in him at all. This is the point of the movie, I understand, but, you know, it was one of those things where you're like, ah! I do appreciate what the movie had to say, and the story's refreshing, the way the screenplay tackles it is unique and ultimately satisfying, even if there are some bumps along the way that make you cringe. Movie number 12 is 1946's Deadline at Dawn. In this American whodunit, Susan Hayward's weary taxi dancer takes pity on Bill Williams' polite sailor when he's implicated in a murder. Eventually teaming with Paul Lucas's philosophical cab driver, they attempt to find the real killer before the sailor must report for duty at 6 a.m. Woo, this was a twisty one. An engaging mystery with a screenplay by Clifford Odets based on a story by prolific crime and suspense writer Cornell Woolrich, packed with fascinating and entertaining characters and suspects with a little personal drama on the side. I really enjoyed Susan Hayward here. She gives a great performance. Paul Lucas, I don't think I've ever seen in this type of role before, so that was interesting. Joseph Cleo stands out as well, and there are other familiar faces. Jerome Cowan playing a heel as he often did, Osa Masson, Stephen Garay, and Lola Lane, who makes a brief but distinctive mark as the murder victim. At just over 80 minutes long, the film's relatively short, but it's got a lot to pack in, and it keeps things moving. It goes a hair too fast in a couple spots, but I found it quite entertaining. It looks really nice, the plot is simple and complex at the same time, and it's populated with some interesting people. And movie number 13 is 1934's Four Frightened People. When the crew of a cruise ship in the South Pacific start dying of bubonic plague, 4 passengers, Claudette Colbert, Herbert Marshall, Mary Boland, and William Gargan, secretly escape, making for a nearby island. They're wearing evening clothes, though, so you can imagine how well this goes. This is a mostly fun pre-code survival adventure, a Cecil B. DeMille production where all the exteriors were shot on location, and there is some awesome scenery here. We've got another interesting cast of characters. Claudette Colbert plays a dowdy, bespectacled schoolmarm who the men have zero interest in. Mary Boland provides amusing commentary as the group's unlikely translator, and Herbert Marshall is a surprising choice of leading man for a movie where you expect people to be running through the jungle. He had a wooden leg, so he never ran anywhere, but they worked around that little issue, and he's still the smoothest, most elegant person in the picture. I quite enjoyed this until it got just a little too silly. There comes the inevitable "Arrgh" moment for Herbert Marshall and William Gargan, and Claudette Colbert has ditched the glasses and realized she doesn't even need them. And she starts slinking around in animal skins that they somehow acquired. And we're in me, Tarzan, you, Jane territory, which is a great place when I'm watching a Tarzan movie, but I was looking for something else here. All of this was predictable, but I was still bummed when it happened. The story devolved into a love triangle, the acting became a little too much, a little heavy-handed, and then I was ready for it to be over. But up until then, I had a good time. And that's what else I saw in April. It was quite a productive month. I managed to cross several titles off my lists, recommendations, and others I've been meaning to get to for a couple years. But don't worry, if you think I'm going to run out of things to talk about, that will never happen. There's still plenty more where that came from. I hope you enjoyed this collection of mini reviews. Let me know your thoughts on any of these movies in the comments below, and I'll be back next Saturday with another video. Thanks for watching.